The city of Atlanta told every Section 8 landlord in the city that they could not raise the rent due to budget cuts. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the city of Atlanta, Georgia, and it has to do with Section 8, okay? And basically, there's a reason why I don't want to be a Section 8 landlord anymore, and this is one of the reasons. The government controls how much you get paid rent as a landlord. They can decide whether they're going to accept your rent increase or not. They don't give a crap about whether you have more expenses, whether all of your costs have gone up. You cannot raise the rent. That's what the city of Atlanta is telling landlords right now. They're saying you cannot raise the rent. Period. Because we don't have the money to pay you. Now, when you're dealing with a regular tenant, guess what? You can raise the rent if you need to. And if that tenant can't pay, you can find somebody who can pay. Now, in the terms of the government, you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. You know, a lot of these houses that they rent out to Section 8 tenants, they are not exactly in great areas. So the majority of your tenants are going to be very low income people, and you're going to have a lot of Section 8 renters in these areas. And a lot of landlords, they depend on this strategy, but you know what? They're going to get caught in a very difficult position due to these budget cuts, okay? We should have known this stuff was coming. Should have known. You know, I have no problem if you want to rent to Section 8 tenants, but as a small landlord in particular, I've always said, hey, don't become 100% dependent on the government. Do not do that, because you're going to be, you know, basically shooting yourself in the foot. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So first of all, are you surprised that the city of Atlanta decided that, hey, we don't have enough money, so we're not going to allow landlords to be able to raise the rent because we're just not going to pay it, okay? Now, my personal opinion is that landlords should be allowed to raise their rent, and if the city doesn't pay it, they should get rid of those tenants if they can. You know, I know a lot of landlords, they are not in the position to be able to just evict a whole bunch of their tenants, so that's not going to happen. But how long is this going to last? That's the real question. I think that the cutbacks to the Section 8 program are going to be long term, and that landlords need to start facing the facts that, hey, we're going to have to work with the actual markets, you know, with market tenants, people paying market rate rents, and not depend on the government to be able to pay our mortgages and, you know, put tenants in our properties, okay? Basically, we should be doing things the way they really work and not base our whole business model on communist Russia, okay? Anyway, let me get into this article. I'm going to tell you exactly what it says. This article is coming from WSBTV.com, Atlanta, and it says, landlords with Atlanta Housing Authority's voucher program told not to increase rent. So yeah, if you're on Atlanta Housing Authority's voucher program, basically Section 8, don't increase rent. Coming straight from the government. Anyway, let's get into the article. For landlords that are part of the Atlanta Housing Authority's Housing Choice Voucher Program, control over rent prices is now out of their hands. A copy of a memo from Chief Housing and Real Estate Officer Alan Ferguson, shared with Channel 2 Action News, said rent increases at HCVP properties would not be approved. The memo was sent on July 14th, with Ferguson telling the landlords that work with Atlanta Housing they would not provide rent increases for HCVP properties requested July 1st or later. Now, I'm sure at the same time they're like, hey, oh, by the way, you know, we're not going to allow you to increase your rent, but we are going to increase your property taxes. You know, that's the way the government works, right? They're like, hey, we want more for us, but you can't, you know, you can't charge anymore. Completely idiotic. You know, I would, you know, like, I have a hard time telling people not to be Section 8 landlords if that's what they want to do. But if it was up to me, there's no way. There is absolutely no way that I would continue to be a landlord in the city of Atlanta, and they're sitting here telling me I can't raise rents. And how long is this going to last? That's the real question, because once the city or the government or anyone comes in there and they say how much the rents are going to be, you know what that is. That's rent control. They artificially keep rents low for themselves, of course, but it doesn't matter. This is rent control. This is a weird backdoor method of implementing a socialist policy in a place that traditionally, Georgia is a landlord-friendly state. In fact, it's one of the most landlord-friendly states according to some articles, but now we've introduced a backdoor rent control on all Section 8 properties. Wow, amazing how this crap works. So you're stuck. You're stuck unless you get rid of those Section 8 tenants. Organization officials said this was due to news and guidance continuing to evolve around federal funding and financial assistance programs, and what it means for industries, organizations, and residents that rely on the funds. The Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, has determined that it is prudent to suspend rental increases for AH's Housing Choice Voucher Program, effective immediately, Ferguson's memo said. So they're going to try to blame the federal government, and these new changes that the government is making. And you know what? I'm in full support of limiting Section 8, making it temporary, making sure that only the people who truly need it get it. I'm talking about elderly people who are unable to work, disabled people who are unable to work. If somebody's falling on hard times, having a good time limit on it so that they don't, it's not 30 years from now, they've raised an entire family of people that they're still on Section 8, like nothing has changed in my life, I find that incredibly hard to believe that nothing has changed in your entire life, and that's because people are holding themselves back. Okay, some people are holding themselves back purposefully in order to maintain their benefits, and that is no way to live. This is just a push towards more dependence on the government. I don't believe in it. I never believed in it. Excuse me. But, in terms of us landlords, right, it's going to be painful going into these cuts at first. But here's the thing. My personal belief is that a lot of the people who are on Section 8 right now, they are fully capable of paying their own rent. They just choose not to. So what we're going to end up with is you're going to still be able to fill your units, okay? People still need somewhere to live. They're just not going to be getting their checks. You're not going to be getting your checks from the government anymore. Instead, you're going to be getting it from people with jobs who are working to pay their own rent. I know, hard to believe. Hard to believe that we could see an end of dependence on the government like this. But overall, I think it'll be better for the economy, better for the people out there, just taking care of themselves, supporting themselves, just being less entitled, and just, there's so many issues I have with Section 8. And it goes into big government, it goes into socialist systems, it goes onto just, laziness. And we've all seen it. We've all seen the amount of laziness of people who don't want to work. They don't want to work. They don't want to pay their bills. They want mommy and daddy government to take care of them for their entire lives. And what does that really mean? That means that people who do work have to pay out the butt in taxes in order to support those lazy people. And that's not what we need, okay? But anyway, I'm going off on a rant, in multiple different directions. For now, just keep in mind, right? If you're a Section 8 landlord in Atlanta, you no longer control how much your rents are going to be.